What if you woke up one day and found out that maybe your family wasn't quite your family? That's what we're going to talk about here with Rich Christiansen. So tune in. Hello, my fellow Ripplers. This is Chris Miles, your cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. This show is for you, those that work so hard for your money, and you're now ready for your money to start working harder for you today. You want that freedom and cash flow, not today, not 30 or 40 years from now, but right now to become work optional, where you work because you want to, not because you have to. But it's not just about getting rich. It's about living a rich life because as you're blessed financially, you now have a greater capacity to create a ripple effect to the lives of those around you. Thank you for tuning in today. Thank you for allowing me to create a ripple effect through you. As a reminder, if you haven't done so already, if you're loving this show, go ahead and give us a review. Give us a shout out, whether it's subscribing on our channel on YouTube, whether you're give us a shout out on Apple Podcasts. Would love to have that positive review from you. So please do that today. All right, guys. So I'm bringing on an old friend of mine that I actually haven't. This is the first conversation we've had in probably more than a decade. Rich Christiansen here. Now, Rich, this guy, man, I mean, he's an entrepreneur of many businesses. He's co-founded or founded at least 51 businesses, 60 of which have become multi-million dollar businesses. And he's also done business in 14 different countries. He authored the book, The Zigzag Principle, which is a great book. I recommend you guys check that out too. But we're going to talk about today specifically about his new book called Blindsided that's coming out right now, which the story is just incredible. And I want to have him talk about that today and really tie that in with your guys and how that faith and that, and that journey even can also tie in with your journey as well. So Rich, welcome to our show.
Thanks so much, Chris. Really nice to be with you again. I love the intro you set up there. That indeed, I think one of the best ways we can control our financial future is being entrepreneurs. But
Yeah.
I also think, as I learned, entrepreneurs are maybe the most functional, unfunctional people in the world. So
Mhm.
uh, good on you.
Absolutely. Well, give us more of your backstory. I mean, obviously you became an entrepreneur. Tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that journey.
I've got the most charmed life ever. I mean, I just lived an amazing life, but there was also some rocket fuel underneath. I couldn't help it. People say are entrepreneurs born or learned. I think it's a
Mhm.
little of both, but in my case, I couldn't help myself. I came out of the womb. I mean, first thing I was doing is I'm like selling seeds around the neighborhood or melting candles down. I'm digging up night crawlers. I was hustling from the day I could walk, and I couldn't help it. It actually drove my dad crazy. He thought I was the weirdest little nutcase he'd ever saw because I just wasn't quite pragmatic enough. And I didn't fully understand where that came from until I was 53 years old.
Yeah. Well, and tell us the kind of I know you mentioned zigzag, and I love this concept because I still think of this concept to this
Yeah.
day, right? Like about when you use your skiing example.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell us more about that and how that applies to business, money, or everything that you've done in life.
Well, the reality is zigzagging is a natural part of life. It's like nature does not follow straight lines. We don't walk straight. We don't, rivers don't flow in straight lines, but we think we're going to build our businesses sequentially. And the
Right.
metaphor kind of came to me. I ended up being one of the precipice lean startup books in that lean startup movement in 2010, 11, 12 time frame. Happened while I was on Everest and I had my young kids with me in the Khumbu region and realized that if we just took and hightailed it straight up the mountain, they're going to die. They're going to get altitude
Mhm.
sickness and die. And so by meandering over to Namche Bazaar and eating apple pie and then the Tingboche Monastery and chanting with the monks and up to Fortune, just kind of this slow, indirect path, oftentimes going down to get up, I was able to get all of my kids safely, which is more important than even the successfully, but safely and successfully to very high altitude. And that board the model of the zigzag principle, which I think is then translated to much of my content in life going forward, Chris.
It's true. I can see that where not a lot of people are really ready to go straight up, right? That
Well, and
rocket
furthermore,
launch.
you die. It's like
Yeah.
as entrepreneurs, it's like what the numbers are horrific, just terrible. It's like what 1 in 20 businesses survive longer than 3 or 5 years.
Right.
And it's like, in my model, it's like, and I think people that are implement do better than I do. But if I start three, one's going to fail, one's going to be mediocre, one's going to be a multi-million-dollar business. And it's just a matter of which is the three. So it becomes felling very efficiently and pulling that angle of declination down rather than pulling it up. And that's what most people do. Oh, I got a great idea, Rich. I'm going to build an app. Or, oh, Rich, I got a killer idea. I'm going to come out with this new exercise band that does blah, 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 blah. It's like, I instantly know that's a 1 in 20, 1 in 30, 1 in 40 chance.
Right.
And so if we can pull angles of declination down and first drive to profitability, and then number two, add resource process, then go for the scale element once you have resources, probability of success is so much higher, and you don't risk falling off a cliff and dying financially at the same time.
So true. So true. I don't know if you've noticed this too, but I've noticed this as I've grown through the years. Really, it seems like my business grows in as much as I grow. If I don't grow, the business doesn't grow either. If I try to grow the business faster than me, some way, shape, or form, I'm going to bring it and drag it right back down.
Yeah, I think that there's element of truth to that. And one of the challenges I think that many entrepreneurs, E-Myth and E-Myth Revisited talked about getting stuck in technician mode, which is
Mm,
grow your business to 800 $1 million and you can't grow beyond it. And the reality is it does require a complete different set of skills. I just got to rewriting Zigzag 2,
mm,
revision 2 in preparation for Blindsided. And many of the principles held very true, but this is one area I did update a fair amount is how to more gracefully make those turns, because shifting between the modalities of technician or hardcore butcher, baker, patty cake maker to
mhm.
then the individual who has to operate cheerleader, process, get congruency, and then making the more difficult shift to actually scale element is pretty challenging and requires a very different set of skills.
It sure does. Absolutely. And those are skills you kind of develop as you stop at the monastery and you go down the hill and back up again, right? Those are the kind of things you pick up along the way.
And those you can learn. I think, particularly if you deliberately understand what you're going for and where you're learning. And I cover that in pretty detail in Zigzag Principle, and have proved many others have proved it can be done if you understand what you're trying to do in the phase of business you're in.
Absolutely. If you've been following this podcast, you're probably looking for great ways to create passive income right now, right? Well, we got you covered here with Central Lending. Central Lending specializes in alternative investments that actually are designed to create steady returns and long-term financial security for you and your family. Now, they prioritize transparency. They love, building those strong relationships, giving you that confidence and peace of mind, knowing that you have your money working harder for you, so you don't have to work so hard for that money. You want to learn more how to do that? Go to centrallending.com and check out what they've got today to create your passive income and wealth creation right now. Well, tell us a little bit more about your new book, Blindsided, which a fascinating story that started about when you were 53, 54 years old, when
Yeah.
most people aren't talking about their stories at that point. They were talking about the early origin stories, but this is a story that seemed to change the course of your whole life, didn't it?
Yeah, it really did, and many people ask, Rich, why did you write this book? Because it's so out of scope and personal. And I got two answers for that. First of all, is I've created all these super cool models. Why and how was I able to do that? And it really requires the origin story.
Mm,
You really couldn't have had the Lord of the Rings unless you understood the Hobbit. And
that's
this is
right.
kind of a Hobbit story, if you will. And second of all, is I think at some point, our dysfunction as entrepreneurs does not cover it all. And we have to get real with ourselves and face our fears with reality. We have to go down the throat of the dragon and grab it by its gizzards. And
Mhm.
so I determined that I had to do that personally as an example to my children, my grandchildren. And also, this story is so salacious. It's so unbelievable that it's going to be told, and I had to tell the story properly. So that's
Mm.
the reason that I did it. Would you like me to quickly go through it, or?
Yeah, I was going to ask, like, give us kind of the basis of the story here, because it's you're
Oh,
telling me this off the air, and it's pretty. It seems almost too good, I wouldn't say too good to be true, but too outlandish to be true, right?
yeah. Yeah, it really I wouldn't have believed it if it hadn't happened to me. The story really doesn't begin with me. It begins back in the Great Depression,
Mhm.
where my grandparents were homesteading a little one-room cabin, no running water, no electricity, and my father was 4 years old. And they discovered that he had retinoblastoma, which at that point, the prospects for a blind person was non-existent. There are only two options. One, work for the circus, or two, become a professional beggar. And my
Right.
grandparents had to make the terrible, awful decision. Do we remove this little boy's eyes and give him maybe a 1 in 20 chance in living anyway, so likely still die? Or do we just let him see? And by the age of 8, he will just die of
Right.
the cancer that goes up the brainstem.
Mm.
the brainstem. And my grandfather won. They removed his eyes, and indeed he did live. And the little blind boy ended up not only surviving, but thriving. He had an eidetic memory, which means that you
Hmm.
could tell him a number or recite something, and 30 years later, he could recite it verbatim.
Right.
He went to pass law school blind, unheard of at that point, and became the highest successful prosecutor in our state. And my mother was 15 years his junior, a beauty queen, multiple marriage proposals. And they remarkably got married. And 2 years later, here I came. My whole definition of identity, Chris, was being the oldest son of John and Laurel Christiansen.
Hmm.
It also afforded me amazing opportunities. When most kids were like throwing ball, my dad had me tuning the carburetor for him. Or 16, I'm driving him up to the state courts to argue cases. And so I really never was a child, never related to children much. And, I adored my dad. I so badly wanted to please him, but he never once ever told me he was proud of me. And
Hmm.
so it was always this little bit of, tension. I mean, you got to ask yourself, who has enough brain damage to create 51 businesses? Well, it's someone maybe trying to earn and prove love. As a matter of
Yeah.
fact, in Zigzag Principle, I needed to create the book, but in all honesty, now as I'm being very open, the primary reason I did it was to get approval of my father. I
Mm.
was sick and tired of him introducing, my brother's son, but I won't use the name, a world famous doctor. My other son took over my law practice. My
Hmm.
youngest son, world famous designer. Richard, I don't know what he does. And I'm a multimillionaire. I've created world. I've run some of the largest companies. So there was this interesting dynamic of me always trying to prove myself.
Hmm.
Well, when I was 53 years old, my youngest brother had a big party because we would, and I really regret it now, but we were mercilessly teasing him because he looked a lot, he was very handsome and dark and a little, that guy kind of little like see the energy, attracted the girl, just really a deliberate man. And so we'd tease him mercilessly. Where did you come from? And my mom would say, oh, that was the Madsen, the beautiful Madsen side. And so he was going to set for rest. My mom died young of breast cancer, so she wasn't around. And so he had a big party in front of 100 of his friends and family and opened up, and they'd all guessed where his origins came from. We're all Danish. Every bit of our ancestry is Danish. As he opened it up, it was 50% Ashkenazi Jew. And I hope that I said that properly, but a fairly, very distinct DNA, which there was no Jewish heritage. So originally we thought, oh my gosh, what happened? It was an affair? What happened here? Something's not right. And we said, it's a stupid test. And then a geneticist came up and says, no, no, they're very accurate. One by one by one, as my brothers took their test, it was discovered that it appeared that none of us were biologically connected. So now
Wow.
we had a real conundrum. Do you go to your 93-year-old father and ask him, hey, Dad, was mom getting some on the side or not your kids? We finally agreed that couldn't have been the case because mom was really framed, really properly. And so my third brother, Vaughn, went and approached him and he said, you caught us? It was going to be the first order of business in the life hereafter. And so what I share in the book is all the details, all the sequence of everything that happened. I'm, going through it really quickly and this beautiful, remarkable love story that mom and dad discovered that dad's retinoblastoma was genetic. Half of us would have been blind, so he sterilized himself. And mom and dad broke up, and then magically they got back together. World famous doctor had moved to Salt Lake City and was practicing donor conception. And it's when it was, quote, nefarious. It was illegal, keeping in mind my dad was the county attorney, so he would
Mhm.
have done something illegal, had to put himself in jail. It was excommunicatable from the religion, which was maybe the biggest surprise. And also, biological father would have had to been. So I turned out to be one of the very, very early donor conceived children.
Wow.
And my parents kept that remarkable secret from us for 50 years. 50
Yeah.
years until this came out.
Wow. How did he respond? I mean,
Only time I ever saw my dad cry as he shared this information with us, it obviously carried a lot of gravity, but it also made a lot of sense because I knew something wasn't right. When I was 12, I went to my mom and said, Mom, something's not right. I'm weird. I don't fit. Something's not right. Am I adopted or something? Mom says, No, 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 you're my son. didn't give me the entire truth. So it did completely disassemble my life. I know it deeply hurt him. He vowed he'd only speak of it once and never speak of it again. Indeed, he held truth to that. So it took a lot of digging, Chris, to get the very bottom of all this. I hired a New York Times investigative reporter to work with me for a year. And put it in context, I rewrote Zigzag Principle in 4 hard days. This took me 5 years, thousands of pages, and you don't want to know how much. So it really did lay bare my truth, my honesty, and my path back to healing and
Mhm.
stability to the point now my life looks dramatically different than it did. And not that it was bad because it was already amazing, but at least now I'm able to stand in integrity and truth of who and what I really am. And I don't think I want to blow the biggest surprise because I want you to read the book, but
Of course.
the surprise has just started
Yeah.
because when I discovered who my real biological father was, and it turned out I look exactly like him, I act exactly
Mm.
like him. Indeed, he was world-class entrepreneur and doctor. Every one of his children ended up becoming either in the medical field or an entrepreneur, and every
Mhm.
one of us became financially independent on our own. So nature,
Fascinating.
nurture, maybe a little bit of both, but pretty big surprise and putting Humpty Dumpty back together again when I discovered my true origins and where I came from.
Incredible. Yeah. And see, this kind of hits home for me because I know I actually don't even know who my maternal grandfather is. It was a family secret. My mom didn't file it until she was an adult. And so we've done DNA tests or whatnot, but we still haven't pieced together, there's not enough samplings of people to say, oh, there's that half sibling that my mom never got to meet or whatever. It's sad because everybody went to it with their grave. And it's kind of cool that you were able to find that out for yourself.
It ended up being the most remarkable love story ever, and
Yeah.
the sacrifice, think of the sacrifice my father made to do this, and my mother, and the level of rule breaking, and quite frankly, stupid rules.
Yeah.
It's like, true. Maybe it was illegal or even excommunicatable from the Mormon faith, but
Mhm.
uh, you know, would the world be better off without Rich Christiansen, without Zigzag Principle, without my five amazing sons? And I'm
Right.
so grateful that my parents had the wisdom to know how to break the rules. I've been quoting the Dalai Lama a lot now. Uh, Understand the rules very, very well so you can understand how to properly break them.
Mm.
And I'm so grateful that my parents, all three of them, were able to give me this amazing, beautiful, rich, big life I've been able to live.
Wow. Sounds like an amazing story. I know everybody want to read that for sure. Where would be the best place for them to go get that book?
Well, go to my website, richchristiansen.com, but it's going to be on all the platforms. You can order on Amazon. I'd encourage you to listen to it in Audible. It's recorded in my voice, but you can order it at most bookstores. Amazon's an easy place, or on my website has a bunch of links. And the
Perfect.
audio version, people are really enjoying that. It's the most unbelievable story I've ever heard, and I can't believe I got to be the one that told it.
Fascinating. Yeah. See, I'm a big Audible listener, so I guarantee I'm getting that book too. Yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, that's a fascinating book. We're gonna put that in the show notes so everybody can get access to that. But man, amazing story, and that kind of ties in with my final question that I ask of all my guests, and you would definitely be. You're kind of already going down this line, I can tell. But of course, our company's called Money Ripples. That's the Money Ripples podcast. We talk about that ripple effect you create in people's lives. Like, what's that? What do you feel is like that purpose? For you being on this planet? What are you here to do? What kind of ripple effect are you here to create? I'll ask you that same question, Rich, is what kind of ripple effect are you here to create?
Well, I think it's been 3 phases of life, and I'm definitively getting to move into this beautiful, more quiet, resolved knowing of what my soul really is and manifesting. I have two major mantras right now, Chris, if I could share them. The first is
Yeah.
speak the truth, or
Mm.
say nothing at all. And oftentimes that means as we get a little older, having the courage to say nothing at all and let the puppies chew on the chew toys, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But when we do it, let's speak the truth in integrity. I just came off a show where I actually declined to do it because they wanted to cover part of the story up. And so, no, not going to do that. So speak the truth or say nothing. No. And the second is this. And I think that this is the really joy for most of us. We cover our life and love to publicly manifest with our fancy backgrounds. You got yours, I got mine. And oh, we know everything. And I'd say BS. We don't. We're
Mhm.
just like faking something externally. So taking the time to really get to know truthfully, who are you? Who truly are you? What's the inner resource? And it doesn't involve most of the time these fancy pants things we profess. So it's the Oliver Wendell Holmes. For this side of simplicity, I would not give a fig. But for simplicity on the other side of complexity, for that, I would give my life. And I would encourage
Mm.
everyone. And my simplicity is to, I am built to create models. I see, because I articulated for a blind father that couldn't see the art of my mother, I can see 5 steps ahead and behind the corner. And I can define frameworks. And much of my life has been and will continue to be to help provide frameworks for humanity. And that's my truth.
I love it, man. That's probably one of the best answers I've heard on the show so far. So really appreciate that, Rich.
Thank
Well,
you so
again,
much, Chris.
yeah, I really appreciate you being on the show. And everybody, go find Rich's book, Blindsided. That's like sight, like seeing sight, sighted. Go find that book for sure. We'll put the links in the show notes for those of you guys driving so you don't go wreck your cars. We want to make sure you guys are staying safe. But guys, that's the thing is that we all have a story, right? And Rich's is a fascinating story, obviously. But it's what we take from that story and how we implement it in our lives. That's what is truly what matters. And so, guys, be sure and make it a wonderful and prosperous week. And we'll see you later.
Thank you, Chris.